Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters, and welcome to the second episode of The Real Superheroes and the part 2 of Mus'ab ibn Umair's story. So last week we stopped at a point where Mus'ab ibn Umair lost everything. He lost his wealth, he lost his family, and he's living this life that he was never used to. He was this very hard life, this very tough life, eating one day, going hungry the other. So his whole lifestyle changed completely. But through that he built his iman, and we can see clearly that he gave all that for a reason, which was for Islam, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he had so much conviction in his belief that all that didn't matter to him, and he was pleased with the situation that he was in. After that, after a while, the Prophet ﷺ was looking to send someone to Medina, to Yathrib, and this is something that has never happened before. At that time, the time of Quraysh in Mecca, nobody has ever went outside of Mecca to spread Islam or to teach Islam. So the Prophet ﷺ chose Mus'ab ibn Umair to be the first ambassador of Islam. This is a very important and very dangerous mission for someone, like the first ambassador ever to go outside of Mecca to spread Islam and to call the people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to teach whoever is outside of Mecca their religion. We are at a point where Islam is in its beginnings, and if I had to choose someone to go outside of Mecca, it would be someone who has very strong belief, has very strong knowledge about the deen, and is very confident in conveying the message, understands what his mission is. So I believe because the Prophet ﷺ chose Mus'ab ibn Umair at that point, he knew that Mus'ab ibn Umair understood what the mission was and what he was supposed to do when he goes to Medina. So Mus'ab ibn Umair was sent there for two reasons. The first reason is to teach the Muslims that are in Medina, teach them about their Islam and their deen, and the other reason is to invite other people to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At that time the Muslims in Medina were 12. Were only 12. And we can see that Mus'ab ibn Umair successfully accomplished his mission when he came back the next time after a year for the season of Hajj. He came back, and with him were 70 Muslims, 72 actually, 70 males and 2 females who accepted Islam at the time where Mus'ab ibn Umair was there inviting people to Islam. So we can clearly see that he was successful in that mission, alhamdulillah, and he taught the people their deen and their Islam. And at that time, Mus'ab ibn Umair faced a lot of stuff while he was in Medina, and very interesting stuff. One of the most interesting stories that or situations that he faced in Medina was while he was going from neighborhood to neighborhood and teaching the people and calling other people to the way of Allah, inviting them to the way of Allah. They came across a neighborhood called, or people who were called Bani Abd al-Ashhal. And with Mus'ab ibn Umair was As'ad ibn Zurara, and he was hosting Mus'ab ibn Umair while he was in Medina. So they went to these people who were Bani Abd al-Ashhal, and they were calling them to the way of Allah. Bani Abd al-Ashhal, they were led by a person called Usayd ibn Hudayr. And then Usayd ibn Hudayr was informed that two men or a couple of people who were with Mus'ab are going around and telling people about worshipping one God and leaving their gods and converting into their religion, and that's what Usayd ibn Hudayr understood. So he was furious and angry, and he picked up his spear and went looking for these people who were calling or trying to, from his understanding, trying to cheat or deceive their people into believing into something else. So he went and took his spear, was looking for this man, and then he found Mus'ab ibn Umair with his companions and went to them and started shouting them with anger. What are you doing here? What are you trying to do here? You're trying to play with the minds of our people and try to make them leave their religion to worship your God. If you wish to live, leave now. So he threatened to kill them if they do not leave. When I said Mus'ab ibn Umair understood his mission, we can see it clearly from his response right now, what he will say. Imagine this situation, someone, you were giving da'wah, you were inviting people, and someone came and threatened to kill you if you don't leave. Mus'ab ibn Umair, with all the calms in the world, he replied and said, why don't you just come and sit with us and listen to what I have to say? If you don't like it, I will leave you and leave your people. As simple as that, a very simple answer, but a very convincing one, and one that is very fair. And Usayd ibn Hudayr was a reasonable man. He was the leader of his people. So he said, okay, what you're saying makes sense. I will sit with you and I will try to listen to what you're saying. So Mus'ab ibn Umair started reciting the Quran and started reciting the Quran, explaining what Islam is. And the more Mus'ab ibn Umair was reciting the Quran, the more he was explaining what it was, the more Usayd ibn Hudayr, the leader of the people of Bani Abd al-Ashhal, became accepting of it, until to the point where he started asking, what does a man do to enter this religion? So Mus'ab ibn Umair replied and told him that you go and wash yourself and come and then just recite the Shahada, the testimony of faith, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah. Usayd ibn Hudayr stood up and went directly and washed himself and came back and recited the testimony of faith, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And that was met with many takbirats from the Muslims. They were shouting Allahu Akbar with joy and happiness, and they were very happy that Usayd ibn Hudayr accepted Islam. Following Usayd ibn Hudayr was another leader, was Sa'd ibn Mu'adh at that time. So Sa'd ibn Mu'adh also came after Usayd ibn Hudayr accepted Islam. He came and listened to what Mus'ab ibn Umair was saying, and he also accepted Islam. And after Sa'd ibn Mu'adh came Sa'd ibn Ubadah, and he was also leader of some people, and he accepted Islam also. So these three leaders accepted Islam. The people of Medina and the people of Bani Abd al-Ashhal were asking themselves, if Usayd ibn Hudayr accepted Islam, if Sa'd ibn Mu'adh accepted Islam, and Sa'd ibn Ubadah accepted Islam, what are we doing? Why are we hesitating? Let's go to this man whose name Mus'ab ibn Umair and accept what he's saying. We have been told that he's saying the truth. So the days and months passed, and the Prophet ﷺ moved to Medina, and while he was in Medina, the first battle between the Muslims and the non-believers happened, and that was the Battle of Badr. In the Battle of Badr, the people of Quraysh and the Mushrikeen of Quraysh lost that battle heavily, and after that battle, the people of Quraysh were fueled and filled with hatred towards the Muslims and the Prophet ﷺ, and they wanted revenge. So another battle was due to happen. The Prophet ﷺ called the Muslims and organized them and looked amongst them, searching for someone to hold the flag on that battle. The flag in the battle has huge significance. It's the sign that the people are still fighting, the people are still, they still haven't been defeated. Once the flag falls, that means they have been defeated. If they can't see the flag, that means they have been defeated. So it's a very important role for the person to have, who's holding the flag, to always keep it high and be around. So the Prophet ﷺ was looking for someone, looking amongst the companions for someone to pick the flag and hold it high during the battle. And he called Mus'ab ibn Umair and gave him the flag and gave him this mission during the Battle of Uhud. In the Battle of Uhud, the Muslims were victorious in the beginning, till a point where the archers who were on the mountain were ordered to stay on the mountain with the Prophet ﷺ. They thought the Muslims were victorious and they were winning, and they wanted to go down and collect the booty of war, some of the booties of war, and they left their positions and disobeyed the Prophet and went down and started collecting. And Quraysh, the Mushrikeen of Quraysh of Mecca, they realized and noticed that they have left their positions, so they came from behind them and attacked the Muslims, and many Muslims and Sahaba died on that day and were killed by the Mushrikeen. The Mushriks had caused havoc and chaos amongst the Muslims, and when they realized that the Muslims were disorganized at that moment, they decided to go directly for the Prophet ﷺ to end this religion once and for all. Mus'ab ibn Umair realized the danger that was surrounding the Prophet ﷺ and what the Mushrikeen of Quraysh were intending to do. So he held the flag high and started shouting Allahu Akbar, and jumping right and left and fighting anyone who would stand in his way, until he met Ibn Qumayyah. Ibn Qumayyah attacked Mus'ab ibn Umair on that day, and he cut off his right hand, the hand that he was holding the flag with. So he took the flag with his left hand and started reciting the verse, وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ. And then Ibn Qumayya attacked him again and cut off his left hand. So Mus'ab ibn Umair leaned towards the flag and held it with his forearms, with his arms, and started reciting again, وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ. And all that in an attempt to condole himself, and because he was thinking, although he was in that bad situation, he was thinking about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was thinking about the da'wah, he was thinking about Islam and where we'll go after it. If he dies and they attack the Prophet and the Prophet ﷺ dies, what will happen to the religion? He was thinking about all those many stuff until Ibn Qumayya attacked him with his spear and stabbed Mus'ab ibn Umair, and on that day Mus'ab ibn Umair fell and the flag fell. Mus'ab ibn Umair was a great companion. His life was a great example of sacrifice. He had everything he needed in this life and he gave it up willingly for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He sacrificed and gave up his wealth. He was kicked out of his own home and he sacrificed his life for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we discussed, that happened on the day of Uhud. And on that day when he passed away, the companions came to bury his body. They couldn't find anything to cover his body except a small piece of garment that he had, and that piece, when they tried to cover his upper body, the head part and his upper body, his lower body would show, and when they tried to cover his lower body, his upper body would show, until the Prophet ﷺ told him to cover his upper body with the garment and then cover the lower part with leaves of a tree called al-idkhar. And on that day the Prophet ﷺ stood at the body of Mus'ab ibn Umair and he said, I saw you in Mecca and there was no one better in dress and looks than you, and here you are with messy hair and nothing except this garment. So that, brothers and sisters, is the life that Mus'ab ibn Umair chose for himself, because he believed that he will get a better life in the next. So that was the end of our first story, which was about Mus'ab ibn Umair. And as I promised in the previous videos, that I will be deriving benefits and lessons from these stories. So here are the 3 lessons that we can benefit from, that we can learn and benefit from the story of Mus'ab ibn Umair. So the first benefit that we can derive from this story is sacrifice, because Mus'ab ibn Umair's story was all about sacrifice. From the way he accepted Islam, to the way he lived his life, to the way he died, everything he did, he sacrificed for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything that would stop him or would impede his practicing of Islam, he would get rid of it straight away. And how we can apply that in our life, because I believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah tells us in the Quran that He doesn't burden a soul beyond what it can bear. So yes, the companions did great things, but Allah knew that they could bear that, and that's why they were tested with these stuff. That doesn't mean that we can't do it, but means that each one of us has his own challenge, his own test, and each one of us has something that we can actually sacrifice for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, something that we are holding on either from days before we were practicing or days before we accepted Islam or whatever it is. There's always that one thing that we are struggling with and we're trying to hold on tight to. So to be practical, I want everyone, inshallah, who's listening or watching this, to write down that one thing and pledge to themselves that, and pledge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they will give it away for His sake, and inshallah Allah will reward them either in this life or in the next, bismillah. And read how, I know everyone gives advice about sacrificing, giving up the sins and giving up this, but don't just be like, write it down and lay down like, or make dua and just sit around. You have to be practical about it. You have to see what are the steps to do that. What can I do to actually get rid of this thing that's stopping me from practicing, or that's depressing, or a sin that I'm committing, whatever it is. We all have something like that. So I want everyone after this, inshallah, to write that one thing down, and then just look into how to get rid of and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His help. The second point that we can derive from Mus'ab ibn Umair's story is the etiquettes and manners in da'wah. In the UK, in in the Western world in general, there's been a lot of da'wah, mashallah. A lot of people have been giving out da'wah and speaking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inviting people to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The most important thing we have to understand about this is what is our mission. Our mission is not to convince people, not to force people, it's simply to convey. And Mus'ab clearly understood that. Mus'ab ibn Umair clearly understood his mission, and that was the mission of the Prophet ﷺ, and that's the mission of all of us as Muslims, is to convey the message, invite people in the best of the ways, and that indeed is something that Mus'ab did. And we can see that in his interaction with Usayd ibn Hudayr, when a man, as I mentioned earlier, a man came to try and kill him, literally tried to kill him, and he still had those manners and still had that way of speaking, he didn't attack him, he didn't feel his ego wasn't hurt, all that kind of nonsense. His simple answer was, just listen to me, if you don't like it, I will leave it. He didn't say, you're trying to attack me, you idiot, this and that, freedom of speech, blah blah. He didn't speak about this nonsense, because he understood the concepts and he used his words to express it. He just said, come and listen to what I will say, if you don't like it, leave it. Simple, very simple. And I believe that's the message, that's our message as Muslims, is that we invite and call to the way of Allah, and that's it for us. The third point that I want to make is that we have this idea that if we give up something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will be replaced in this life, which in some situations can be true, but in other situations it doesn't have to be true, because as we discussed earlier in the story of Mus'ab ibn Umair, he gave up everything he had, his wealth, his money, he was kicked out of his house, he lived a very poor and tough life, and he didn't get something better in this life. But Mus'ab ibn Umair understood that he will, and that this is not the end of the story, he will definitely get something better in the next life, and Allah will definitely reward you. Whatever you do, Allah will record that for you, so you'll never lose that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will replace you with something better in the next. It doesn't have to always be within this life. So those are the three benefits that I wanted to derive from this story. I hope that everyone enjoyed the story and it was beneficial for everyone. Jazakumullah khair for listening. Subscribe, like, and give us your feedback if you can. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.